You're listening to Stimulus Tech Talk, a conversation-based podcast created by Stimulus Technologies that covers a range of topics related to business and technology.
Hello, welcome to Stimulus Tech Talk. I'm Nathan Whittacre, CEO of Stimulus Technologies, and I'm joined today by Darrell Evans, CEO of Yokel Local Internet Marketing. Welcome, Darrell.
Nathan, what's going on? I'm excited to be here with you.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here too. We've known each other for, 15 years or more, and excited to have Darrell join us today. And Darrell is a serial entrepreneur, investor, and CEO, co-founder of Yokel Local Internet Marketing and host of his own podcast, the Mindshift Podcast. And as a marketing and sales expert, he and his team have helped hundreds of companies streamline customer acquisition online and in social media over the past 12 years. So I'm excited to talk a little bit about digital marketing and entrepreneurship and company growth and lots of different things today. So again, welcome, Darrell. So tell us a little bit more about your background and how you got started in marketing.
Yeah, thank you for that. The story's quite long, but I'll keep it as short as possible. I first started my first business when I was in college, kind of more of a side hustle, not a full functioning business, but my taste for entrepreneurship started in my teens, and then I decided to do something while I was in college. Fast forward to marketing, though, I got into the real estate industry as well when I was in college in the mid 90s, and was very fortunate to get around some very high level producers in that industry. And I noticed they were doing some things differently. They were doing things that were not exactly the run of the mill teaching of real estate acquisition and customer acquisition back then. And so that terminology in the marketing space is known as direct response marketing. And I found it very intriguing. I found it very fascinating. I found it a little bit more permission based and not interruptive as cold calling and door knocking and some of those things were. Fast forward into my transition into the mortgage industry in 2000. Along comes the internet and the introduction of an email marketing system came into place. And so I jumped onto that bandwagon in 2003 when I realized, I could talk from one to many with the push of a button. And behind the scenes, I kind of consider myself a lazy entrepreneur, but I like leverage. So that was great. Mid 2000s, we started our internet marketing division in our mortgage company at the time, and jumped on social media 2006, 7, and 8. We did LinkedIn 2006, 2007 was really the breakthrough when we started a YouTube channel to answer frequently asked questions of our at that time 35 to 50 mortgage clients a month, and just found out the leveraging power of the distribution that YouTube offered at that time. Even in the early days, there wasn't a quote unquote YouTuber category back then. And I noticed people were finding us more and more online, more and more on the internet. And I realized that at that time, consumer behavior was probably changing forever, and that businesses needed to adapt this. And so met my co-founder back in 2008, 2009. And we spun off our agency in 2011, which is Yokel Local Internet Marketing, as you mentioned. And as you said, for the last 12 or 13 years or so, we've been focused on helping companies grow online.
So I'm going to take a little aside here because I remember something specifically when we first met that kind of drew us together a little bit. You were engaged with Beachbody, if I remember right. And yes, you had a video series or some things that you did on the internet that really drove that little side hustle or side business for you quite a bit, if I remember right. So
I'm surprised you remember that. Yeah.
But I remember you saying that was what kind of triggered the idea of Yokel Local, is this idea of engaging with customers through kind of realistic videos, some things that, intrigued them. And it wasn't like, this whole like studio experience. It was in your home working out, and that's what drew the customers in.
Wow, Nathan, I can't believe you remember that, but wow, you're so right. I almost forget about those days. But I was doing the program Insanity from Sean T through Beachbody.
Yeah.
And I decided to record my journey through the program. And at that time, I'm about 215 pounds and I wanted to lose some weight. Actually, I'll apologize. I was about 215 when I started my journey. By the time I got to Insanity, I think I was about 195. And I had a goal weight to get back down to about 170, 175. Anyway, I started putting up some very raw videos based on every fit test. So every 30 days, we would take a fit test. And you're right. I just put those videos up just to show sort of a behind the scenes. And little did I know that YouTube channel, separate from the mortgage channel, that YouTube channel got to about 850,000 subscribers in, I don't know, a year or so. And I wasn't trying, Nathan.
Yeah.
That was the thing. Was before you know it, I was making some money from YouTube, and I didn't I didn't get it. I didn't do it to make the money on YouTube ads, but it was a very interesting distinction that what we did in the YouTube channel with the mortgage company was we just recorded face to camera regular answers to questions that our customers had. No fancy editing. Back then, of course, we used to have to use Firewire to get the video off of a camcorder onto a computer. I mean, for those not aware of that, you never want to go back to those days. Trust me.
This is so much simpler, right? We could sit here
I mean, yeah. And today, when I still think about the challenge of doing video, the days back then were so hard. I don't want to be the guy jumping back a decade and a half, but yeah, you're right, Nathan. That was a very interesting point. That was the realization for me that overproduced video was not necessary, that people wanted to connect with people. People wanted to connect with people, and that shows up now in almost every aspect of personal branding today. We see it today in what's called the content creator / influencer space, but we are really big on helping our CEOs, founders, whoever the stakeholders are of the organizations, bring their face out a little bit more into the front of their marketing. Mm-hmm.
Because I think we think about it on the business to consumer side, right? That you were connecting to other consumers with your journey. How do you help businesses on the B2B sales connect with their consumers? I mean, in the end, people buy products. I mean, businesses don't buy the products. It's the people inside the businesses that make the buying decisions. Yeah. So how do you, and this is completely we're going a different direction than I thought we would, but it's a good question. Like, how do you take and position a business that they're connecting with other people to buy their business products, like in a raw scenario?
Yeah, B2B, and it's interesting. We get these categorizations: B2B, B2C. At the end of the day, it's B to H, right? It's business to a human. It's human to human at the end of the day. So the question in B2B is, and the distinction or the paradigm shift, I think, in B2B is recognizing what you just said, and that is our marketing has to become a bit more personalized, and it has to become a bit more connective to the emotions and the behavior of the buyer, meaning can we empathize with the actual purchaser? And in B2B, we tend to find the decision maker not as emotional about some of the B2C products where we buy on emotion and reason with logic, because usually a B2B buyer is a little bit more pragmatic, a little bit more logical about what they need. But at the end of the day, they're looking for what I call the signal that governs almost every big ticket B2B purchase. And that is trust in the provider's ability to deliver the product or service. And two, confidence. They're looking for that provider to convey a level of confidence that moves that purchaser into trust. So in digital, what we try to spend time on is helping the marketing move the buyer into a place of empathy, where it shows that the brand is empathetic to their need, empathetic to their past journey that led them to a current problem, and try to transition the sales conversation, whatever that could be, if it's an RFQ or RFP, or if it's a sales consultation, which typically in B2B it is. But we're trying to invite them into a dialogue that says we understand them. It's easier said than done, and each industry has its own nuance about how the psychology of the buyer works. But we spend a lot of time trying to understand the buyer's journey of that ideal customer for the business. And there may be different buyers, but we're trying to connect the level of their thinking to the outcome. As we say, stakeholders have different reasons for saying yes. The CFO has maybe a different reason for saying yes than the CEO. The CEO may have a different reason from saying yes than the CMO. And if we're dealing with a company that has multiple decision makers on a big ticket purchase, we've got to really understand how each of them see that journey.
So, kind of taking it back to technology here, we're on a podcast right now. Stimulus has our own podcast. You have your own podcast. That's a technology to reach potential buyers, but also, build hopefully some trust and authority. How do you, if somebody is wanting to do a podcast, let's say a CPA firm or a law firm or, one of these professional services organizations wants to use technology better, whether it's podcasts or YouTube channels or whatever it may be to connect to their audience. How do you get started with that? That's might seem overwhelming.
Yeah, I think there's two paths of travel, or actually, I think there's two paths that should be considered. Number one, when we see a lot of brands wanting to podcast or do YouTube channels or blog for that matter, or even in just their email communication, there's two paths of travel. Number one, can you create content that aligns with the inquiry that your prospective customer could be having, thinking from a Google standpoint? So it's prudent to think, I should be creating content for my podcast or my YouTube channel or my blog that's related to the questions or information that my prospective customer could be searching for already through a channel like Google. On the flip side, I think to your point of building trust and authority, I think it's really important that the brand establish a set of a content rhythm that elevates themselves in the marketplace. What do we mean by that? It could be talking about industry trends, things to avoid, mistakes that you should not be making in whatever it is that you do in your field. So I think there's two parts. What I see, Nathan, however, sometimes is I find brands getting too in the weeds of their expertise where it disconnects with their buyer's journey or disconnects with the sort of the pain points that their customers could be having. I grew up in the direct response world, as I mentioned, in multiple industries, and it applies across multiple. And there's a concept in copywriting that we call PAS, P-A-S, problem, agitate, solve. And what we try to do is think about, are we able to present a problem that our ideal customer or prospect is thinking about in our content creation, whatever modality we're doing it in? Are we able to agitate that a little bit? I'd like to say that we also want to empathize or excite them to the fact that there is a solution. So I feel like sometimes brands, obviously they're not copywriters necessarily, but that is a missing component in content creation. It's all about what they want to say to the world, but it's not meeting necessarily their customer where they are.
Gotcha. So, again, having you on this podcast, we're talking about marketing and digital marketing and how to connect with clients. And, my company, we sell IT services. We don't sell marketing services. So, and I know your podcast is kind of similar. You have a Mindshift podcast and you're talking about entrepreneurship, and it's not necessarily, all about internet marketing or, digital or just that's all you talk about. I'm sure my customers are tired of me talking about cybersecurity and how to protect their businesses. So, having this type of podcast that we're having a discussion kind of a little bit, kind of aligned, but a little bit outside of, the usual discussion. How does that help a brand, like Stimulus or like Yokel Local, elevate themselves even in their own domain?
I think it's a great question, and I think it aligns because as humans, we're interested in multiple things, and you never know what doorway or what path will lead you to a solution, an idea, a connection. In my podcast, it's called the Mindshift Podcast, and it doesn't even on the surface indicate that it has anything to do with entrepreneurship or business or growth or marketing. It is a storytelling podcast in a way where we identify, we talk about the journey from inspiration to realization. And when life knocks us down from breakdown to breakthrough, well, that's a life journey. And if you're an entrepreneur, there's going to be a journey that you have there. If you're in marketing, there's a journey. So I think how can you use a more general topical podcast and then bring in varieties of guests, I think it helps to be well-rounded in your marketing communication. I think it helps connect with multiple types of audiences, because I think you and I, Nathan, are old enough to remember the days before the internet. And even though you started quite earlier than I did, but we always believe in business, at least the adage that many people believe is that people buy from who they know, like, and trust. And the interesting thing about that statement is, here's a real example. We helped a company recently with a bit of a digital transformation of their brand. And do you know, he sent me a text message a couple of weeks ago asking me if I had a contact for business cards, letterhead, and business promotional materials. Now, I don't have that in my business. There was nothing even discussed, but he trusted me in a way to say, well, I don't know where I should go, but I enjoyed what I did with him. Maybe he could save me some time and give me a resource. And so when I think about the podcast, I've gotten more connections, more cross-channel relationships, that whether I need them or sell them or not, I've got such a big pool now of contacts. And I think the audience can come to appreciate that authenticity through the dialogue.
It's, I think I agree with 100% on that, because, it's one of the kind of directions I took my book. I mean, some of my favorite business books aren't just about the business topic, but they are incorporating things in real life. I kind of triggered me a book that I read a while ago. And I think both you and I were introduced to it through our CEO peer group, High Altitude Leadership. And, it was a mountain climber that's relating his experiences climbing Everest and, K2 and all these things, and relating it to business. And like, they seem so disconnected, but I like that because it was, real world experiences that were brought into, his business side of it. So it's interesting, it's humans connecting with each other that makes a big difference.
Yeah.
So if somebody wants to get started with podcasting, how do you, or with any of this technology, how do you get started with it?
I just had this conversation just not long ago, a week or so ago. Most people wouldn't know this from my podcast now sitting at 260 or so episodes, but my very first 3 episodes were recorded from my smartphone sitting in my closet. So I like to say that aside from all the technology you could do, at the end of the day, you've just got to decide, is it going to be you on a solo show where you're teaching, educating, inspiring, sharing your knowledge, sharing your expertise, sharing your wisdom? That's kind of a solo show. B, are you going to do an interview show? And an interview show is the easiest type of show to start, because there are far more people than you could imagine who want to tell their story. And they will want to tell it to a brand new show as well as they'll want to tell it to a popular show. So an interview show is an easy way to get started. I think having a hybrid show is best, because what I found when I first started my interview show was people said, hey, where's your voice in the show? We're hearing it from all these guests, but where's your voice? But I think, Nathan, the platform that we're on, there are multiple platforms that are web-based, whether it's a Zoom platform, the platform that we're on with your podcast, the platform that I use. They're all very, very simple. And today, especially post-pandemic, we're all used to connecting virtually. You can start there. You can start, again, if you want to do a solo show, there are simple audio apps you can download for free on your phone just to have good audio. And of course, now we're in the world of AI. So producing a show is more inexpensive and efficient as it ever has been. I mean, 2023 now with AI, you get some pretty amazing things to get a show out today.
Oh, I'm glad you brought up AI. That was actually going to be one of my questions. Is I know that, from a content standpoint, our discussion and the words we're saying are really important to generate it. So how are you using, as a digital marketer, AI to, take these videos, take the podcast, take all this content and make it so that it's driving customers to people's websites and hopefully in the end, a purchase for the customer. So how are you incorporating that into your business?
Yeah, great. So at the agency, one of the first things we started doing when AI came out was one of the things we do every month is we interview our customer, meaning if we're working with a lawyer, we interview our lawyer client. If we're interviewing a doctor or a chiropractor or an accountant or someone like that, if they're in an industry where a traditional SEO or copywriter or creative writer is not going to have that specific company's level of expertise. We interview the customer every month. We ask them 6 to 8 questions relative to what we would be writing about on their blog for search engine traffic. What we now do that we did manually with video editors, what we now use AI for is we're able to extract the audio and the video from those conversations. We're able to use AI to cut up each of those clips with AI. We used to have to send that to a video editor and timestamp every clip. Now AI is getting really good at understanding where those breakpoints were in the discussion, and then it captions the video. It puts the captions on, which are great for social media. When it comes to the audio track, then we also can reverse engineer the transcript into social media captions, email newsletters based on each clip or based on the entire episode. So when it comes to marketing and trying to be everywhere, which can be exhausting and daunting, trying to be on every social media platform and all of that. But today it's easier than ever. Not to say you have to, but we're using AI to leverage that at breakneck speed. It's actually been very incredible to think of where we started with AI in January of 2023 and where we are right now at the time recording November 2023. It has completely changed our whole workflow in a good way. Now, you can't just throw that stuff in AI and get 100% perfect out of it. It still takes a human on the back end to edit, to optimize, to put the particulars in that are necessary for either good content, good social, good headlines, etc. But it is speeding up the pace. But that's kind of how we're using all audio and video today. In fact, we prefer not to write first ever again if we don't have to. Let me tell you what we're not doing for all the listening audience. What we're not doing is going to AI and asking AI to create the content on the front end. So we're not doing that. We're reverse engineering it from the expertise of the brand. And this matters in a real way if you're interested in getting traffic from Google from an SEO perspective or a search engine optimization perspective, because Google has a very specific quality rating that they look at. And it's an acronym called EEAT. First E stands for expertise. Second E stands for experience. The A stands for authority. The T stands for trust. That's what they're looking for in the content. So when you go to AI, you can get the expertise 70, 80% because of all the large language modeling. It's able to get the facts of the topic. But what it can't do is add the other EAT to the end. And that's where a human inside of the company or a marketer who's on your team, internal or external, they have to add those extra components because otherwise the content will just look like every generic bland content across the internet, and the internet doesn't need any more of that. So, but I hope that helps.
Yeah. So is that how, I mean, you mentioned like there's tons of content, and I'm sure AI is just like exponentially helping companies generate even more and more content. So how do you stand out, as a company against all this content? Now it's, when you started doing video on YouTube, there was probably only maybe a couple of thousand channels. Now there's, thousands of millions of channels, out there to look from. So how do you distinguish yourself amongst all the other content that's being generated?
I think it's a great question. And I think there's one way that will always be the distinguishing factor, and that is your face to camera. Even if you're speaking about the same topic, there's a certain set of people, there's a certain audience who's only going to resonate with your voice, only going to resonate with your cadence, only going to resonate with your rhythm, only going to resonate with your stories and your analogies and your experience. And I think that is the only way to completely cut through the noise of topics that they've already been produced in mass. Here's an example. We have a estate planning and probate law firm client, and I started her on this process in June of this year, just a few months ago. And she was a little bit resistant, although she had been creating content on her own. She just didn't know some of the nuances that we added to the equation. When we put up organic videos, we are seeing some videos go 1,500 views, some videos go 200 views, some videos go 60 views. We had one go 12,000 views. When we add advertising to the mix, which means we take those same videos and now we intentionally go put those out. One of her recent customers came in and said, the person became a customer and said, I watched all your videos on your channel. She said to me, I've never had an easier sale in my life, because the person was already on their own journey to try to get an answer to a question they had in their mind, but weren't quite ready to go book a meeting with an attorney. Found her channel through one of her videos that we helped her create, then found the rest of the videos that seemed to build the trust and authority. She said, Darrell, I didn't have to do my typical spiel. That's what I found out about in 2007. So we're still trying to beat on this idea that your voice, your experience, your journey is going to connect, even if the topic is the same topic of many, many, many of your competitors, because you
And
have
that
a way to tell it. They can't tell it.
and that customer is coming in pre-sold. I mean, they've watched the videos, it's all done the work, and they're ready to buy at that point. They're ready to they've already made the decision. So,
Yeah. By the time they get to that meeting, it's just like, it's a done deal. And to me, that's the easiest way to grow a business today. It doesn't mean we don't do outreach. It doesn't mean we don't do outbound sales calls. That's not what I'm saying. But where we talk about that question of how do we cut through all the content noise and the competitors, it is developing a commitment to your authentic voice being out front in the marketing. And if you look at even big companies, look at Richard Branson from Virgin. There was a season when he was always out front using his voice. If you look at some of the big names like Kevin O'Leary and Shark Tank and Damon John and a whole bunch of others, Mark Cuban, they're all lending their voice to the marketing, not because the person who calls thinks they're actually going to talk to the celebrity, but it's a different enemy. It's a different angle than just putting a celebrity endorser on a commercial. It's a different feel. And that's what I think is the opportunity. And every brand can do it now at no cost because the channels are free. The technology, we already carry it in our phone.
yeah.
The path of least resistance is gone. It's just, there's nothing there in the middle. It's just a decision to have a strategy and execute it and produce it.
So the Sharks, I'm part of this technology group that's in my industry, or this group that's in my industry, and several of the Sharks have come in. And Robert Herjavec actually owns a cybersecurity company. And one of the things he said to us, though, is that him being on Shark Tank and having that, he's not any better than any other security expert out there, but having that celebrity has made the biggest difference to his company. Is the
Just sitting in that
businesses
chair.
yeah, it's a huge difference. Huge difference.
It's interesting. Nathan, the thing that I've learned over the last 12, 15 years, and I talk a lot about this, and that is the distinction that our consumer doesn't need us until they've decided. Where if we jump 15 to 20 years ago, they had to come to us to get the information. I don't want to date this, but back when I first started in real estate, the multiple listing service that came out every month that showed you what houses were on the market, what houses were in escrow, what houses were sold, it looked like a phone book. Today, we all know that that's available on realtor.com, zillow.com, and you don't need an agent until. And in our businesses, many cases, we still resist the idea that the customer has access to all the information they need and more to develop their opinion. The problem is if they don't find your information, they're going to go with someone else. If they go on their journey at 11 o'clock at night because something about your solution is bothering them and they go to Google, will they find you or will they find your competitor? And I promise you, if they find your competitor first and get caught up in the web of their content, you're never going to hear from them. And that's a big statement, but it's a big truth. And that's why we advocate video, because you don't need to have 1,000 videos, by the way. You don't need to have 1,000 videos. I think we've produced 18 videos for this attorney that I just mentioned. And we spent $400 in ads to amplify those videos. And she got her first customer who said, I watched all your videos and signed up easier than any customer she's had in 18 years. So she's excited now about the process. She's excited.
So it'll go from 18 to 180 here pretty quick, is what you're saying.
I think so. I think so. So, but it's a distinction that the customer has at their fingertips the device that is the device of all devices of our technology. And now we add ChatGPT to it, which, Nathan, if you want to even get into that conversation, I wonder where Google fits into this as time goes on, because ChatGPT can do some of the things that we used to go to Google for in terms of answering questions. But that's a whole nother topic, and that's still on the horizon. But the customer's in control of the journey, and we have to get ourselves into the journey as they see it. And that could be on social, could be on YouTube, could be on a blog on Google. But it is a little bit more dynamic and diverse today.
Yeah, it's, the search engines are, obviously starting to incorporate AI into their systems. Microsoft obviously is partnered with ChatGPT, and there's a Bing search that incorporates a lot of AI. Google's doing the same thing. It'll be interesting to see where these, where and how that changes your marketing industry over the next couple of years, because I think it's going to be dramatically different. And
I don't disagree.
Yeah, and you have to have that content there to really be the ones that are going to be the authority. And it's one of the reasons I wrote my book too is it's just setting yourself up as an authority, connecting with customers through stories and different ways that only I can, because it's my experiences are very different, and it's my company is different than than any other IT company. But from the face of it, going to stimulustech.com, going to my website, it's hard to see that, without all that background information.
And I want to take a second and shout out the journey that you did to write the book, because you just nailed the point. On the surface, most of our brands, it looks the same on the outside. And so you've got 25 going on 30 years of experience. I mean, it's you can only tell that story your way. And
Right.
So I applaud you for getting the book out. You inspired me, of course. I've started a book project, and you were sort of the last tipping point. I took your advice the last time we met at Mastermind, and I finished the book that you recommended, and it helped. So I just wanted to shout you out for your accomplishment and all the success to your book. And I'm looking forward to helping support that cause too.
Yeah, thanks, Darrell. And so what is so you're writing a book. What's your topic, or where are you at in that journey?
Yeah, very beginning stage. I hired a coach a couple of weeks ago. We're at the early stage, but we don't have a title yet, which is good for me. But I've always approached marketing from a Pareto's principle standpoint. And for those that are familiar, it's basically the 80-20 principle, which indicates that 80% of your results come from 20% of your effort. There's been several other books that have kind of skimmed around the topic, but it is the core of my marketing philosophy, and that is you don't have to do everything, you have to do the right thing. And at the beginning of any journey with a customer of mine, whether it's a consulting customer or an agency customer, we are trying to figure out how to laser focus in on one problem to solve for one buyer, find them in one place online, speak to them in one way, and move that person through to the finish line. And then we begin to expand. So it's very much a minimum viable marketing process that I've developed over the last. I really developed it 23 years ago, and then I didn't realize that I kept repeating it kind of in a subconscious way, and that's what we're going to be telling the story on. And it's really a book about removing complexity from both marketing strategy and tactic.
Oh, I'm excited to read it, and I'm sure it'll be a fun journey. It's interesting, writing whatever content, whether it's short form like a blog, a video, or things like this podcast, or the long form of a book. It really narrows down your ideas, and that was one of the things that was great for me, is researching and narrowing down these concepts really helped solidify my ideas too. So I'm excited for you to go through that journey.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm learning a lot, and it definitely is a different form of communication for me. I've been speaking these concepts for probably 15 years, but to put them in the book channel format appropriately is the learning for me right now. I'm getting coached, and it's kind of feeling like I'm a third grader. So I'm humbled by the experience to really refine my craft in that area. So I'm excited.
So kind of bringing us back around to my first question. So I was doing P90X, which I don't do anymore. You were doing Insanity. Are you still doing Insanity, or are you on a different physical journey than you started out with.
No, actually, but shout out to Beachbody. They were the journey I spent. I still have a membership to Body, which is their on demand. Basically, it's Netflix now for fitness. So shout out to Body. They just have been a staple for me. I just did one of their running programs the other day. But this year, 2023, I'm extremely excited to say I've convinced my brother, who has been 20 plus years training athletes, all sorts, lacrosse, football, baseball, softball, volleyball, men and women, pro and high school. I convinced him to teach us ordinary folks how to better our bodies. And so I've been training on his beta program all year, which has been a very fun experience. He's out of the Denver area. Used to grew up here in Vegas with me, but so I've been on his program all year, and it's been a mix of strength training, cardio, resistance, endurance, and he's customized my program for the ebbs and flows of my my lifestyle and my business demands. So it's been a really fun journey this year with him.
That's excellent. It's nice to have somebody help you along that journey. I can't say it enough. I probably never said it on this podcast, but as entrepreneurs, we have so many stresses in our lives. Having that release through exercise, through endurance sports, whatever it may be, is so important to stay fit, and both mentally and physically. It's essential. So
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. It's just, we have so many demands on us, but we have to take time as entrepreneurs for ourselves, so that we're here for much longer than we might not be if we don't take care of ourselves well.
Yeah. I think of it two ways. And by the way, another shout out to you, because you're such a inspiration in terms of the challenges that you put yourself through. We certainly put ourselves through a lot of physical challenges, but you certainly go after it. I got to tell you, I think for me, the one thing that I'd add to that is we have to make a lot of decisions as entrepreneurs. We have to make a lot of decisions as CEOs, business owners. There's a lot of things that happen day to day that has nothing to do with growing a family and taking care of life outside of business. And I've learned that anywhere in my life, I don't have to think about the decision. I try to remove the decision. Part of that is that fitness. I go to the gym. I don't want to think about what I have to do. That's why I worked out with Beachbody for so many years. They tell me what to do. I pick up, I push play. And now today I push play on my brother's app, and it tells me what to do. And so I love that part of it as well. So I can stay fresh for all the decisions I have to make. But I agree with you. We only get one body to live in, and stress in entrepreneurship is real. It comes out of nowhere. And if you're not prepared for it, it can really do damage to the body. No question asked. So
certainly can. Well, it's enjoyed, our journey together in different, slightly different, but parallel lives in our businesses. And, it's great talking to you. And I know we're doing your podcast here in a little bit too. And, maybe
can't
talk
wait.
a little bit about my journey there. So
that's right.
Well,
yeah.
Thank you, Darrell, for sharing your insights about marketing, digital marketing, podcasting to our group. So really appreciate you being on today, Darrell.
Thanks, Nathan. I always appreciate you hosting a platform and allowing me to share my story. So it's been a pleasure being your friend and colleague over the last 15 years and to many more years to come.
And just real quick, how do they, if anybody's interested in what you do, how do they find you?
Probably the best way is to, to go over to darrellevans.net, DARRELL, Evans, EVANS.net. That's sort of the central hub of all things Darrell. And feel free to reach out and connect. I'm on social media everywhere.
Excellent. And we'll put some links to that down below. We use AI to transcribe our podcast. So it's definitely, we'll make sure we get that link in there. Again, Darrell, thank you very much, and have a good rest of your day. And thanks everybody for joining us today on Stimulus Tech Talk.